Let my people go, he said again. Staff to a serpent, river red like pain. Frogs in the ovens, dust turned to flies. Still Pharaoh's heart kept turning.
Put yourself in Pharaoh's magician's shoes for 1 second. Your whole career, your whole identity is built on being the guys who can match any miracle. You turned water to blood, you made frogs appear like it was easy. You've kept up with everything so far. And then Moses stretches out his hand and the dust becomes lice. Everywhere, on every human, on every animal, on every surface in Egypt. And you try your enchantments, you try everything you know, and nothing happens. So you turn to Pharaoh, your king, your God, and you say, "This is the finger of God." And that's where we're going today. Welcome to Come Listen With Me. I'm Ricky Black, aka Elder Eliezer, and today is day 2 of our week 15 journey through the Exodus as we continue our 2026 Come Follow Me reading plan. And today we're reading Exodus chapter 8, all 32 verses, plus chapter 9, verses 1 through 7. That's plagues 2 through 5, the frogs, lice, flies, and disease on the livestock. So these are the plagues of escalation. And just like yesterday, we're going to read every verse together and stop along the way to talk about what's really going on, right? The Egyptian gods being challenged, Pharaoh's psychology, the principles that apply directly to our lives as well. Now, before we read, we want to read with intention and not just passively. So here's a couple of questions to keep in mind as we read to help focus our thoughts. So, what does Pharaoh do when the pressure starts to lift? So as we read, watch for the patterns: crisis, plea, relief, hardening. And what changes in Pharaoh when he's suffering and what changes when he gets comfortable again, right? Next question. Where do we see the difference between God's power and counterfeit power? Because the magicians, they can imitate things, but where do they hit the wall and why does that matter? And final question. Where does God begin drawing a line between Egypt and Goshen? And what does that teach us about covenant, redemption, and divine protection? All right. So with those questions in mind, let's dive right on in. All right. Exodus chapter 8. Now, we've seen the waters of Egypt run red with blood and all the fish are dead. And now we're moving on to plague number 2. So let's start with verses 1 through 4. And the Lord spake unto Moses, Go unto Pharaoh, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. And if thou refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all thy borders with frogs. And the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into thine house, and into thy bedchamber, and upon thy bed, and into the house of thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thine ovens, and into thy kneading troughs. And the frogs shall come up both on thee and upon thy people and upon thy servants. All right. So into your bed, into your oven, into your bowl where you mix your bread, on you personally. So this is a total invasion of daily life. There is nowhere in Egypt that is untouched by this plague of frogs. Now, the Egyptian connection here is the goddess Heket. She's a frog-headed goddess associated with fertility and childbirth. And she was one of the most beloved deities in the Egyptian pantheon. So frogs were considered sacred. You didn't kill them. In fact, in some traditions, harming a frog was a criminal offense. So imagine the theological crisis that this just created. One of your more sacred animals is now in your bed, in your food, rotting in piles in the streets. Like the very thing that you worshipped has become your affliction. And that's what happens when any created thing is elevated above the creator. All right, let's move on to verses 5 through 7. And the Lord spake unto Moses, Say unto Aaron, Stretch forth thine hand with thy rod over the streams, over the rivers, and over the ponds, and cause frogs to come upon the land of Egypt. And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought forth frogs upon the land of Egypt. Notice, the magicians, they can still keep up at this point. They also produce frogs. But think about the absurdity of that, right? Egypt is drowning in frogs, and the magician's contribution is to say, yeah, more frogs. We can create more frogs. They can make the problem worse. But never at any point are they able to solve the problem, to alleviate the suffering. And that is the nature of counterfeit power. It might be able to imitate the crisis. It can make things worse, but it can never provide the actual cure. All right, verses 8 and 9. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, "Entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people. I will let the people go that they may sacrifice unto the Lord." And Moses said unto Pharaoh, "Glory over me. When shall I entreat for thee and for thy servants and for thy people to destroy the frogs from thee and thy houses, that they may remain in the river only?" So this part is fascinating. Moses lets Pharaoh choose the timing. Glory over me is essentially saying, you set the terms so you'll know that this isn't a coincidence. Like, you can pick the hour and God will deliver at that exact hour. So this eliminates any possible claim that it was just nature taking its course, that it was purely by accident. All right, so moving on to verse 10 and 11. And he said, "Tomorrow." And he said, "Be it according to thy word, and thou mayest know that there is none like unto the Lord our God. And the frogs shall depart from thee, and from thy house, and from thy servants, and from thy people. They shall remain in the rivers only." So Pharaoh says tomorrow, not now, but tomorrow. So you could ask, like, why wait? Why endure one more night of frogs in your bed? Or maybe he's just testing whether Moses can really deliver on a timetable. Maybe he's hoping they'll leave on their own overnight. He won't have to credit Moses as God. Either way, Moses agrees. And the purpose is stated very explicitly, that thou mayest know that there is none like unto the Lord our God. All right. So verses 12 through 14. And Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried unto the Lord because of the frogs which he had brought against Pharaoh. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses, out of the villages, and out of the fields. And they gathered them together upon heaps, and the land stank. So the frogs die everywhere, in the houses, in the villages, and in the fields. Like, they gather into massive heaps, and the whole land reeks. And the cleanup from this plague is almost as bad as the plague itself. Rotting, sacred animals piled into the streets of a nation that revered them. All right, so verse 15. But when Pharaoh saw that there was respite, he hardened his heart and hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. The moment the pressure lifted, the promises, they all evaporated. So if we kind of go through that again slowly, it says, when the Pharaoh saw that there was respite, right? So the frogs are gone and he can finally breathe and relax again. And immediately the promises that he made under duress, I will let the people go. Yeah, it all just dissolves, goes away. And that pattern should make every one of us a bit uncomfortable, because I think we've all been there and we've all done it, right? We've all been on our knees in crisis, making promises to God, and then drifted the moment life got comfortable again. So Pharaoh's cycle isn't ancient history, it's human nature. And recognizing it in ourselves is the first step to breaking that cycle. All right, moving on to the next plague. So let's go to verse 16. And the Lord said unto Moses, Say unto Aaron, Stretch out thy rod and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man and in beasts. All the dust of the land became lice throughout the land of Egypt. So no warning to the Pharaoh this time. So God doesn't always announce what's coming. Sometimes judgment arrives without a forecast. And maybe deservedly so. After all, the Pharaoh made a promise and he broke it. So this is just a just retribution. The dust of the earth itself became lice on every human, every animal, every surface. Like, can you imagine just being there that day and suddenly the dust everywhere in the desert just starts to move and to crawl? It's very disturbing. Now, some scholars connect this to the Egyptian god Geb, so the god of the earth. The very ground that Egypt's theology said was sacred and life-giving now produces infestation. So it's another deity that's exposed as being a fraud and powerless. Moving on to verse 18. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice upon man and upon beasts. They could not. So for the first time, the magicians fail. For 2 plagues, they've been keeping up, producing serpents, turning water to blood, making frogs appear. But now they hit the wall, right? Their enchantments, they don't produce anything. Their power has reached its limit, right? And that's kind of interesting because now God isn't even going to let them contribute to the problem. He's finally just saying, you don't even have the power to try and replicate this. I've removed that from you. So think about that progression. In plague 1, they could duplicate a miracle. By plague 3, they can't even participate. And by plague 6, as we'll see on Wednesday, they won't even be able to stand up. So the trajectory of counterfeit power, it's always downward, right? It impresses at first, then it fails, and then it crumbles entirely. All right, verse 19. Then the magician said unto Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. So, right there, this is the finger of God. The magicians get it before Pharaoh does, right? The people closest to the false power are the first to recognize the real power in front of them. They've spent their entire careers imitating divine signs. And so they know the difference, right, between what they can manufacture and what they cannot explain. And they tell Pharaoh plainly, this is beyond us. This is true power and authority. This is a real God. And Pharaoh, well, he just ignores them. And there's a lesson here for us as well. Sometimes the people around you can see what God is doing in your life more clearly than you can. A friend, a spouse, a bishop, a parent, they're telling you this is the hand of God. Pay attention, right? Are you listening to them? Or are you doing what Pharaoh did, right? Hearing the testimony and walking right past it. All right, let's get into the 4th plague now. And this is going to be starting in verse 20 and 21. And the Lord said unto Moses, rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he cometh forth to the water, and say unto him, thus saith the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy houses. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereon they are. Again, Moses intercepts Pharaoh at the water, right? The same pattern as the first plague. The warning is clear and specific. If you refuse, flies will invade every house and cover the ground itself. Clear warning. All right, so 22, 23. And I will sever in that day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end thou mayest know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. And I will put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be. So God draws a line. And this is new, right? This hasn't happened in the first 3 plagues. Starting now, God makes a visible, undeniable distinction between Egypt and Goshen. The flies will devastate Egypt, but Goshen will be untouched. Now, the Hebrew word here for division is parut, right? It literally means redemption or ransom. So God isn't just separating his people geographically, he's redeeming them and he's setting them apart. And this is the principle of divine distinction. So God separates his covenant people from the consequences falling on the world around them. And not because they're better people, but because they're covenant people. And that's the real difference. All right, moving on to 24. And the Lord did so, and there came a grievous swarm of flies in the house of Pharaoh, and into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted by the reason of the swarm of flies. So the word corrupted, it's pretty important here, right? It's not just an annoyance. The land itself is being destroyed. Now, the Hebrew here suggests that the ground, like the agriculture, the infrastructure, everything was being ruined by the sheer volume of the infestation. And so it goes a lot further than just having a lot of annoying flies. It's very, very significant. All right, then we're going to do verses 25 through 27 now. And Pharaoh called for Moses and for Aaron, and he said, "Go ye, sacrifice to your God in the land." And Moses said, "It is not meet so to do, for we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. Lo, shall we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, and will they not stone us? We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God, as he shall command us." Pharaoh, he starts negotiating, right? His first offer was, fine, sacrifice to your God, but stay in Egypt. And Moses says no. He gives a practical reason, right? The sacrifices Israel offers include cattle, which Egyptians consider sacred. So if they slaughtered cattle in front of Egyptians, they'd be killed for it. The religious practices, they're just completely incompatible. So they would have to leave and go out 3 days' journey into the desert where they can do that in peace. And this is a detail that shows like the historical plausibility of the text, right? Moses isn't just being difficult, he's navigating a genuine cultural and religious conflict. You can't worship Jehovah on Egypt's terms. You have to leave and go somewhere else. And that's still true today. You can't fully live the covenant while staying in your own personal Egypt. At some point in time, you have to leave. Verse 28. And Pharaoh said, "I will let you go, that ye may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only ye shall not go very far away. Entreat for me." So here it is. Pharaoh's second offer and continued negotiation. Okay, so go, but not too far away, right? Stay really close by. I don't want you to really leave. And then he says, "Entreat for me." He wants Moses to pray for him, even in his stubbornness, because Pharaoh knows who actually has access to God. There's sort of a subtle recognition of power and authority here, right? But he's still not really willing to submit to the will of God. He's still kind of negotiating and begging for favors. All right, let's look at verses 29 through 31. And Moses said, "Behold, I go out from thee, and I will entreat the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, from his people tomorrow. But let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully any more in not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord." And Moses went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and he removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, from his people, and there remained not one. Yeah, Moses agrees to pray for him. But look at the warning, verse 29. Let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully anymore. Yeah, Moses is calling out the pattern. He's saying, I know what you've been doing. You promise under pressure, you break your word, and then the pressure lifts. Yeah, well, let's not do this again, right? And God responds, right? He responds to the entreaty, right? Completely. Not a single fly remained. Total removal. God's deliverance is always thorough. But note, God's been saying he knows what's going to happen here. So even though he's lifting the curse because of, Moses' prayer and treating for the Pharaoh, he still does it, even knowing exactly what's going to happen next. And that's verse 32. And Pharaoh hardened his heart at this time also, neither would he let the people go. So, oops. Yeah, so he did it again, right? Moses warned him. God delivered him. Pharaoh has seen the power of God repeatedly over and over again with his own eyes, right? Experienced the plagues and the relief. And yet, Pharaoh hardens his heart at this time also. So the text, it's almost getting weary, right? The narrator has seen this before. We've seen this before. And yet Pharaoh does it again. And that's kind of, the terrifying momentum of the hard heart, right? Each cycle makes the next hardening easier. It's almost like they think they can pull one over on God because they negotiated something, they got something real quick out of it, and off they go. But they're not really thinking about the long term. They're just thinking about the immediate release. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to chapter 9 now. And this is going to be the fifth plague dealing with the disease on livestock. So let us pick up in verses 1 through 3. Then the Lord said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh, and tell him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For if thou refuse to let them go, and wilt hold them still, behold, the hand of the Lord is upon thy cattle which is in the field, upon the horses, upon the asses, upon the camels, upon the oxen, and upon the sheep. There shall be a very grievous murrain. Now, that word there, murrain, is a King James term for a severe infectious livestock disease. It's not a minor illness. This is something that's meant to be catastrophic, right? Horses, donkeys, camel, oxen, sheep. Egypt's entire animal economy is going to be afflicted here. They're going to be devastated. And notice the phrase, the hand of the Lord is upon thy cattle. Not Moses or Aaron's hand, right? Not the rod, but the Lord's hand will be there directly. And as the plagues progress, the language becomes more personal, right? God is personally engaging with Egypt's resistance. And this plague is targeted at deities like Hathor, the cow goddess, and Apis, the sacred bull of Memphis, right? So Egyptian religion didn't just revere these gods abstractly, like they kept living sacred animals in their temples, right? The sacred bull of Apis was treated like royalty. It was housed in a special temple, fed the finest foods. So imagine that bull dying of the plague. So the theological implications were very, very devastating for the Egyptians. Like, your living God just died in his stable, and there was nothing you could do about it. Why? Because the hand of God was upon him. All right, verse 4. And the Lord shall sever between the cattle of Israel and the cattle of Egypt, and there shall nothing die of all that is the children of Israel. So there we go. We see that word, sever, right? Now, the Hebrew word is badal, right? And it conveys a sort of formal setting apart or some sort of miraculous way of distinguishing a group. Think about this. When you are set apart for a calling, you're being badal in a way, right? Severed, but set apart. So God is drawing a line between his people and the world around them, right? And of course, not one animal belonging to Israel will die. Why? Because he has set them apart. He has severed them from the world. Verse 5. And the Lord appointed a set time, saying, Tomorrow the Lord shall do this thing in the land. Tomorrow, God gives advance notice again. He names the day. Now, why? Well, this eliminates any claim, again, that it was random disease or, coincidental timing. We don't necessarily have this plague on the cattle showing up and then Moses and Aaron are suddenly claiming it was God, right? God announces it, gives the exact day, and that's exactly when and how it happens. So when God says tomorrow and it happens tomorrow, it's not nature, that is his sovereignty. Right, verse 6. And the Lord did that thing on the morrow, and all the cattle of Egypt died. But of the cattle of the children of Israel died not one. So all of Egypt's, and not one of Israel's, and just as he promised, for they were in fact badal. So the contrast here is it's very absolute, right? Like, the total devastation is on one side of the line. The total protection is on the other. The same land, same region, but completely different outcomes. And that's what covenant means. It doesn't mean life is easy. It means you're on the protected side of the line that God is going to draw. All right, verse 7. And Pharaoh sent, and behold, there was not one of the cattle of the Israelites dead. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. Pharaoh doesn't just ignore the evidence anymore, right? He's actively investigating it. He sends people to Goshen to check, and they come back and they confirm it. Yep, not one Israelite animal has died. So Pharaoh, he has the evidence. He has the testimony of his own investigators. He has the confession of his own magicians from, starting in Plague 3. He has seen the timing of God, right, at all instances. He's seen Moses intercede for him and bring relief. And still he will not let them go. So can you imagine how stubborn you must be? In Hebrew, someone who's stubborn is usually sarar, right? Which means that they're just turning away from something, like a teenager being rebellious in their resistance to authority, right? It's real punk rock to be sarar. But this feels more like kasha. It's an adjective that means hard or stiff, but like being stiff-necked or stubborn, right? Being obstinate. Like even the Paleo Hebrew, the glyphs, they paint a picture of gathering stalks of wheat and putting them into tight bundles. And when you do that together, like their stiff stalks, they create this sort of unyielding, unbendable core that just doesn't break. It allows them the bundles to stand against the wind and everything else, right? So the Pharaoh, absolutely, he is being the very definition of kasa. And that really is the end stage of a hard heart. It's not ignorance or a lack of evidence. It's a refusal to act on what you already know is true. Putting your back up, becoming stiff-necked in spite of everything in front of you. And that really is a mirror for all of us, right? So the question is almost never whether we have enough evidence. The question is whether we're willing to act on what God has already shown us, what the Spirit has already revealed to us. Or will we be kasha in the face of all that we have been shown? And that's all our reading for today. We read all 32 verses of Exodus 8 and the first 7 verses of Exodus 9 today. So 4 plagues, each one more personal and more invasive and more impossible to explain away. And each one God becoming more and more directly involved. We saw frogs turn a sacred goddess into a national nightmare. We saw magicians hit their limit and confess the authority and superior of the one true God. We saw God draw a line of protection around Goshen, and we watched Pharaoh investigate the miracles with his own people, confirm it with his own eyes, and harden his heart anyway. And running through all of it, that cycle, crisis, plea, relief, hardening, crisis, plea, relief, hardening. Yeah. So here's my question for the comment section today. Have you ever caught yourself in Pharaoh's cycle? Have you ever cried out to God in your hardest moments, made promises, negotiated with the Lord, and then started drifting once things got easier, once the Lord lifted the burdens and gave you the blessings? If so, how did you break the cycle? I'm asking because I've been there. I'll probably be there again. It's part of human nature. We all have. We all will be. So let's talk about it and learn from each other and become stronger for it, because that's the point of a good, strong, faithful community. Anyway, tomorrow's day 3, and it gets absolutely apocalyptic, right? Boils, hail mixed with fire, locusts descending from the sky upon the crops, and then a darkness that is so thick you can actually feel it pressing against your skin. Yep. So we'll be reading Exodus 9, verses 8 through chapter 10, verse 29. So the sun god Ra is going to go dark. Egypt's magicians, they won't even be able to stand up on their own 2 legs. And Pharaoh's own servants are going to beg him to surrender. It's going to be a lot of fun. Don't miss it. Also, the song of the week, Remember This Day. Again, the link's in the description, so give it a listen, as it'll speak to you more and more as you read on through this week's scriptures. It's specifically designed for this study, and it's really going to help just kind of drive home everything we've been reading. I know you're going to enjoy it, so go check it out. Anyway, that's all I have for you today, so I'll see you back here tomorrow. And as always, I appreciate you all, and thank you for choosing to spend some of your precious time to come listen with me.
Hearts like flame, with an outstretched arm, he called our name. Remember this day, teach every child. Love passed over and let us out. If the night grows heavy and the road feels long, paint the door red and sing this song. He remembers his covenant, so will